You know that feeling when someone plays with your emotions like it's a game, pulling you close one moment and pushing you away the next. It leaves you questioning yourself, doubting your worth, and wondering what's real. Today, we're cutting through that fog. We're going to pull back the curtain on the tactics, the mind games, and the emotional traps so you can see them clearly for what they are. This isn't about revenge, it's about reclaiming your peace, your clarity, and your power, because once you understand the game, you can choose not to play it. You can't protect yourself from something you don't see coming. That's why the first step in outsmarting someone who's messing with your emotions is learning to recognize the game before you get caught up in it. Most of the time, the signs are there, they're subtle, but they're there. It's that inconsistency you can't quite put your finger on. One day they're warm, attentive, making you feel like you're the most important person in the room. The next they're cold, distant, distracted. It leaves you chasing that warm version of them, wondering what you did wrong to make them pull away. This isn't random. For a lot of people who manipulate emotions, inconsistency is a tool. They keep you guessing so you're always seeking their approval. It's like they hand you a gift and snatch it away before you can even unwrap it. And the more they do it, the more your brain starts associating them with both pleasure and pain. That push-pull dynamic creates emotional dependence. It's not love, it's not care, it's control. Sometimes, the manipulation comes in the form of guilt. You bring up something that bothered you, and somehow, by the end of the conversation, you're the one apologizing. That's not healthy, that's a tactic. They shift the focus so you question whether your feelings are valid. This is called gaslighting, and it's powerful because it makes you doubt your own reality. The more you doubt yourself, the easier it is for someone else to write the story for you. Then there's the emotional high and low. They'll create moments that feel incredibly special, a deep conversation, a shared laugh, a compliment that feels genuine, and then, without warning, they'll disappear, ignore your messages, or seem completely disinterested. That sudden drop in emotional connection can make you desperate to get back to the high. You start thinking, if I can just do or say the right thing, maybe they'll go back to being the person they were before. And that's exactly how the cycle traps you. The key to breaking free from that cycle is awareness. You need to be able to step back and see the pattern, even when you're in the middle of it. Ask yourself, is this behavior consistent? Do their actions line up with their words? Pay attention to whether they are building trust with you or eroding it over time. True care is steady, not unpredictable. Here's something important. Recognizing manipulation doesn't make you cold or paranoid, it makes you wise. You're not looking for reasons to mistrust people. You're making sure you don't hand over your heart to someone who doesn't have the capacity or willingness to handle it with care. And when you do see those red flags, you have a choice. You can call it out directly, you can create distance, or you can step away entirely. But the first move is always recognizing what's really happening. It's also worth understanding that people who manipulate emotions often test boundaries in small ways before they escalate. It might be a little joke at your expense, followed by, "Relax, I was only kidding." Or they might push you to do something you're uncomfortable with and frame it as you being too sensitive if you say no. These are not harmless quirks, they're trials to see how much you'll tolerate, and every time you let it slide without addressing it, you teach them that you're willing to accept it. You can't change someone else's behavior, but you can decide how much access they have to your emotions. Part of recognizing manipulation is being able to emotionally step out of the moment and observe what's happening, almost like you're watching it from the outside. This takes practice, because when you're emotionally invested, every little shift in their behavior can feel magnified. But when you can step back, you start to see patterns instead of isolated incidents. It's like hearing the same song play over and over. At first, you might not notice it. Then you start recognizing the melody, and once you do, you can't unhear it. Manipulation works the same way. Once you recognize the pattern, the hot and cold, the guilt, the shifting blame, you can't go back to thinking it's all accidental. You start seeing it for what it is, and when you see it, it loses its power. The truth is, manipulators thrive in the shadows. They rely on you not being fully aware of what's going on, but the moment you shine a light on their tactics, the game changes. It's not that they stop playing, it's that you stop playing along, you stop taking the bait, stop chasing the highs, stop letting their opinion of you dictate how you feel about yourself. That's the first real victory. Once you understand the signs, you can respond instead of react. You can hold your ground without getting pulled into the emotional chaos. You can protect your peace without feeling guilty for doing it. And that's how you begin to take back control, not by matching their manipulation with your own, but by refusing to give them the access they once had to your heart and mind. Because the moment you recognize the game, you've already stopped losing it. When someone is messing with your emotions, one of the most dangerous things they can take from you is not your trust, not even your time, it's your sense of self-worth. Because once that starts slipping, you'll begin to tolerate treatment you never would have accepted before. You'll explain away their behavior, justify their disrespect, and tell yourself that maybe you're overreacting. And little by little, your confidence erodes until you can't even remember what it felt like to stand firmly in who you are. That's why holding on to your self-worth isn't just important, it's essential. It's the foundation that keeps you from being pulled under when someone tries to drown you in doubt. But here's the challenge: when you're emotionally involved, self-worth can get tangled up in their approval. You start feeling better when they're giving you attention and worse when they're not. Without realizing it, you've handed them the power to decide how you feel about yourself. That's a dangerous place to be, because now your value lies in their hands instead of your own. The truth is, self-worth has nothing to do with how someone else treats you. It has everything to do with how you treat yourself. It's in the boundaries you set, the way you talk to yourself when you're alone, and the kind of behavior you're willing to allow in your life. People who play with your emotions often sense when you're unsure of your own value, and they'll use that uncertainty to keep control. But when you're anchored in self-worth, their attempts to undermine you hit a wall. Think about it this way: if you know who you are, what you stand for, and what you deserve, their inconsistency won't shake you. Their silent treatments won't crush you. Their manipulative comments won't define you. You'll see their actions as a reflection of them, not as proof that something is wrong with you. And that shift changes everything. Part of staying rooted in self-worth is building a strong inner voice that doesn't depend on outside validation. You have to be able to tell yourself, "I am enough," and actually believe it, even when someone is trying to make you feel otherwise. This isn't about arrogance or pretending to be unaffected. It's about knowing that your value doesn't increase or decrease based on how much someone likes you today. One of the traps manipulators set is making you feel like you have to earn their affection over and over. They'll give you just enough approval to keep you chasing it, then pull it away so you keep working for it. And if your sense of worth is tied to that approval, you'll run yourself into the ground trying to get it back. But if your worth is already solid, you can recognize the game for what it is and refuse to play. It's also important to remember that self-worth isn't built overnight. It's built in the choices you make daily. It's in deciding not to respond to every provocation. It's in reminding yourself of your strengths, your values, and your wins, even the small ones. It's in surrounding yourself with people who see you clearly and treat you with respect. And it's in refusing to shrink yourself to fit into someone else's idea of what you should be. There's something powerful about living from a place of worthiness. You stop needing to prove yourself to people who aren't invested in you. You stop explaining your boundaries to those who only want to cross them, and you start trusting your gut when something doesn't feel right. That's the strength manipulators can't take from you unless you hand it over. Sometimes, staying rooted in your self-worth means letting go of people you care about. That's hard, it hurts, but it hurts far more to stay in a situation where you're constantly questioning your own value. When you're anchored in worth, you don't beg to be chosen, you choose yourself. You don't settle for half effort, you expect full respect. And you don't stick around hoping someone will change, you move forward knowing you deserve more. Here's the reality. People who mess with your emotions will always try to make you believe you're too sensitive, too needy, too much. But when you know your worth, those words don't stick. You can take feedback, but you filter it. You accept what's constructive and discard what's meant to control. You're no longer living in reaction to their moods, because your stability comes from within, not from whatever version of them shows up that day. And yes, there will be moments when they push hard enough to make you question yourself again. That's normal. Self-worth isn't about never doubting, it's about catching the doubt quickly and reminding yourself of the truth before it takes root. It's about standing in that truth even when someone is trying to knock you off balance. When you protect your self-worth, you protect everything else: your peace, your clarity, your ability to love and be loved in a healthy way. You stop seeing someone's mistreatment as a challenge to win over and start seeing it as a sign to step back. And in that space, you regain the freedom to live without constantly measuring yourself against someone else's shifting standards. Because when you stand firm in your self-worth, you stop letting people who can't see your value tell you what it is. When someone is trying to mess with your emotions, one of their greatest weapons is controlling the conversation. They do it in subtle ways, interrupting you when you're about to make an important point, changing the subject when the focus shifts to their behavior, or flooding you with so many half-truths that you can't keep track of what's real anymore. Before you know it, you're not leading the conversation, you're chasing it, you're reacting to what they're saying instead of expressing what you actually came to say. And in that moment, you've lost control without even realizing it. Taking control of the conversation doesn't mean you dominate it or talk over people. It means you set the pace, keep the focus on what matters, and refuse to be pulled into emotional side streets designed to confuse you. It's about staying calm and intentional instead of allowing someone else's emotional swings to dictate the tone, because the second you let them decide where the conversation goes, you're letting them decide where your emotions go too. One of the most effective tools manipulators use is bait. They'll say something provocative, maybe even insulting, just to get a reaction. If you take that bait, the conversation spirals into defending yourself, proving your point, or trying to convince them of something they've already decided they won't believe. You think you're engaging in a discussion, but you're actually dancing to their rhythm. The only way to win that game is not to play it. Instead, when someone throws bait, pause, don't rush to respond, breathe, remind yourself that not every statement deserves a reply, and not every accusation requires your defense. Sometimes the most powerful response you can give is silence, because silence shows you're in control of yourself, and nothing throws off someone trying to control you more than realizing they can't get under your skin. Controlling the conversation also means knowing when to redirect. If they try to spin the topic away from the issue at hand, you can bring it right back without aggression. You might say, "We can talk about that later, but right now I'm addressing this." The key is to stay steady, because the steadier you are, the harder it is for them to create chaos. And manipulators thrive in chaos. Another way to maintain control is by being intentional with your words. You don't have to say everything you feel in the heat of the moment. You can wait, you can choose your timing. People who manipulate often depend on you speaking before you think, because raw emotion is easier to twist and use against you. But when you slow down, you take away that advantage. You give yourself space to be clear, and clarity is a shield they can't easily pierce. Here's something important to understand. Controlling the conversation isn't just about what you say, it's also about what you allow. If they start using personal attacks, exaggerations, or guilt trips, you can calmly point out that it's not productive and choose to end the discussion until it can be respectful. Walking away doesn't mean you've lost, it means you refuse to let the conversation sink into a place where nothing healthy can be built. It's also helpful to remember that sometimes people will keep talking in circles to wear you down. They figure if they repeat themselves enough, you'll either give in or lose your temper. You can break that loop by calmly acknowledging you've heard them and then holding your ground. You don't have to agree. You don't have to match their energy, you just have to be consistent. Consistency is one of the most powerful ways to communicate that you can't be moved by emotional turbulence. There's a quiet strength in being able to steer a conversation without forcing it. It comes from knowing your goal before you even start speaking. If you know what you want to communicate and what outcome you're aiming for, you can recognize when the other person is trying to pull you off track. And once you see it happening, you can decide whether to bring it back to the point or end it altogether. That's control not over them, but over yourself, and make no mistake, this kind of control isn't about winning arguments. It's about protecting your peace. You're not trying to outtalk them. You're trying to make sure you don't get pulled into a verbal trap that leaves you drained and doubting yourself. When you master the skill of controlling the conversation, you stop getting lost in endless debates that go nowhere. You stop letting someone else's emotional storm decide the direction of your day. The beauty of this approach is that it's disarming. A manipulator expects you to react, to fight, to get tangled up in their words, but when you remain calm, focused, and clear, it shifts the balance of power. It shows them they can't lead you around with half-truths or distractions. It tells them, without you ever saying it outright, that you're not going to be a part of their game. Because when you take control of the conversation, you take control of the space where emotions are exchanged, and that's where the real power lies. When someone is playing with your emotions, one of the most important things you can do is protect your emotional energy. Think about it, you only have so much mental space, so much heart space, and if that gets drained by someone who thrives on pulling you into chaos, you start losing your focus, your joy, your peace. And once those are gone, you're easier to manipulate. You start reacting instead of thinking. You start pouring all your energy into trying to fix a situation that was designed to keep you unsettled in the first place. The problem is, people who mess with your emotions often don't come at you directly. They chip away at you little by little. A backhanded comment here, a small boundary push there, an unnecessary guilt trip in the middle. Each moment might seem too small to take seriously, but together they add up. And if you're not careful, they drain you dry without you even noticing. That's why guarding your emotional energy isn't just about defending yourself from the big, obvious moments. It's about protecting yourself from the slow leaks. One of the first steps in doing this is knowing what drains you and what restores you. Pay attention to how you feel after certain conversations. Do you feel calm and understood, or do you feel tense and confused? Do you feel lifted up, or do you feel like something has been taken from you? That awareness is your early warning system. When you start noticing that a certain person or situation leaves you feeling consistently worse, that's a sign your emotional energy is being tapped. And once you see it, you have to create boundaries. Boundaries are not walls to keep everyone out, they are filters to let the right people in. You get to decide how much of yourself someone has access to. If a person can't be trusted with your vulnerability, you don't owe them unlimited access to it. If someone repeatedly crosses the line you've drawn, you don't owe them endless chances. Protecting your energy is not selfish. It's necessary, because the truth is, if you don't set limits, people who thrive on emotional games will take as much as you give, and then some. Sometimes that means limiting how often you see someone. Sometimes it means keeping conversations surface level instead of diving deep into topics they might twist. And sometimes it means walking away entirely, not in anger, not as revenge, but because you know you can't keep pouring into a bucket that has no bottom. Another powerful way to protect your emotional energy is to stop explaining yourself to people who have already decided not to understand you. When someone is committed to misunderstanding you, no amount of explaining will change their mind. All it does is drain you. They might even pretend to misunderstand you on purpose, just to keep you talking, keep you defending, keep you spinning in circles. Instead of falling into that trap, learn to recognize when a conversation isn't about resolution, it's about control. And when you see that, you have permission to disengage. Guarding your energy also means managing your own reactions. People who play emotional games often feed off the responses they get. If you blow up, they use it against you. If you break down, they frame it as proof that you're unstable. If you get flustered, they take it as a win. But when you train yourself to respond instead of react, they lose that grip on you. You can acknowledge what they say without giving them the emotional reaction they're fishing for. And that right there is a quiet kind of power that they can't handle. This doesn't mean you become cold or shut off completely. It means you become intentional with where your heart goes. You still care deeply, you just don't hand that care to people who have shown they'll use it against you. You still love, you just love with wisdom. You still listen, but you listen with discernment, filtering what's meant to inform you from what's meant to control you. One of the hardest parts about protecting your emotional energy is that you might feel guilty at first, especially if you've been a giver all your life. The idea of pulling back can feel wrong. But protecting your energy isn't about shutting others out, It's about making sure you have something left for the people and things that truly matter. You can't show up fully for the right relationships if you're constantly depleted by the wrong ones. And here's the truth, people who genuinely care about you will respect your boundaries. They won't make you feel bad for taking care of yourself. The ones who push back, who try to make you feel guilty or selfish for setting limits, are the very people your boundaries are meant to protect you from. When you guard your emotional energy, you start to notice something powerful. You think more clearly, you make better decisions. You feel lighter, calmer, more in control, and that control doesn't come from changing them. It comes from taking responsibility for what you allow in your space. Because no one has the right to drain you without your permission. When you protect your emotional energy, you protect the life you're building. When someone has been messing with your emotions, it's easy to feel like they're holding all the power. They set the tone, they decide when things are good or bad, and you're left responding to whatever they choose to give you. But the truth is, they only have that power because you've been handing it to them, maybe without even realizing it. And the way you take it back is by reversing the dynamic. That doesn't mean playing their games or trying to out-manipulate them. It means shifting the focus of your life so that they're no longer the center of it. When your attention, energy, and decisions are all tied to someone else's approval, you're living in reaction to them. If they are in a good mood, you feel like you can breathe. If they're distant, you're anxious. If they show affection, you light up. If they pull away, you sink. That's not balance, that's emotional dependency. And people who like to control emotions know how to keep you in that state, because it keeps you predictable. The first step in reversing the power dynamic is to stop measuring your worth by their response to you. You don't need their validation to know you're enough. You don't need their attention to feel secure. When you stop chasing their approval, you start seeing their behavior for what it is, not as the authority on who you are, but as a reflection of where they are. That's a massive shift, because it means your mood no longer rises and falls based on their actions. Reclaiming that space starts with making your own decisions without asking for their input or permission. You decide what you're going to wear, how you're going to spend your day, what goals you're going to chase, without waiting to see if they'll approve. It's not about cutting them out completely if you're still in contact. It's about no longer giving them the steering wheel to your life. Even small choices can start to build that independence, and every time you do it, you remind yourself that you are capable of directing your own path. Another way to reverse the dynamic is to refocus your attention on things that fulfill you outside of them. That means investing your time in hobbies, friendships, work, or causes that give you purpose and joy. When your happiness comes from multiple sources, they lose the ability to control you with one source. Suddenly, their approval is just one drop in a much bigger ocean, and that drop doesn't have the power to make or break you anymore. You also have to be willing to pull your energy back when they're trying to provoke a reaction. A manipulator thrives on knowing they can push a button and get an immediate response. But when you stop reacting, when you no longer rise to every jab, every silent treatment, every hot hand, cold switch, you're showing them that their control is slipping. That's not about ignoring someone to get even. It's about showing yourself that your emotions aren't tied to their performance. Part of shifting the power also comes from refusing to be the one always reaching out, always fixing things, always keeping the connection alive. In healthy relationships, effort flows both ways, but with a manipulator, the more you pour in, the more they take for granted. If you stop being the constant initiator, you'll see the truth fast, whether they value you enough to step up, or whether they only stayed connected because you were doing all the work. It's important to understand that this shift won't always be welcome. People who are used to controlling the emotional dynamic often push back when you stop playing your old role. They might accuse you of changing, of being cold, of not caring anymore. That's not because you've become unkind, it's because you've stopped feeding their control. They'll notice it, and they'll test you to see if they can pull you back into old patterns. Expect that, be ready for it, and remember that your job isn't to convince them you're still the same. Your job is to become healthier and more balanced, whether they like it or not. Reversing the power dynamic doesn't mean you become heartless or stop caring about people. It means you stop putting yourself in a position where your emotional stability depends on someone else's behavior. It means you show up in relationships as a whole person, not someone hoping another person will complete them. And when you do that, something incredible happens. The respect you have for yourself grows, and people who can't match that level of respect start falling away. This shift also changes how you see the manipulator. Instead of looking at them as this all-powerful figure who can make or break your emotional world, you start seeing them as just another person, flawed, human, and no longer in control of you. Their highs don't sweep you away, and their lows don't drag you under. They become background noise instead of the main soundtrack of your life. And here's the thing: when you reverse the power dynamic, you don't have to announce it. You don't need to tell them, "I'm taking back control." You simply start living differently. You make choices that reflect your independence. You invest in yourself. You stop reacting to their games. And over time, they either adapt to the new, healthier version of you or they fade out. Either way, you've won, because you're no longer playing a game you never should have been in to begin with. Because the real power was never theirs to begin with, it was always yours. Sometimes the strongest, smartest move you can make is to walk away. But here's the hard truth: most people don't walk away until they're completely drained, completely broken, and completely certain there's nothing left to fight for. And by that point, the damage is deep. That's why the ability to exit with strength isn't just about leaving. It's about recognizing the moment when staying is doing more harm than good, and having the courage to act before you've lost yourself in the process. When someone is messing with your emotions, they often create just enough good moments to make you doubt whether you should go. One kind gesture here, one affectionate text there, one day where they seem like the person you hoped they'd be, and suddenly you're questioning your decision to pull back. That's the hook. That's how they keep you attached. But if you zoom out and look at the whole pattern, you'll see those good moments don't erase the manipulation, the disrespect, or the inconsistency. They just make the cycle harder to break. Exiting with strength begins with accepting that you may not get closure from them. People who play with your emotions rarely give you a clean ending. They'll either try to keep you in the loop so they can still have access to you, or they'll twist the narrative so it looks like you're the one who failed. If you wait for them to validate your decision, you might be waiting forever. Closure doesn't come from their explanation. It comes from your decision to choose peace over chaos. The moment you decide to walk away is often the moment you realize your worth can't be negotiated anymore. You stop asking for the bare minimum. You stop making excuses for why someone can't meet you where you are. You stop hoping they'll magically change into the person you've been waiting for. You start seeing the situation for what it is, not what you wish it could be. And that clarity is what gives you the strength to leave. Walking away doesn't mean you hate them. It doesn't mean you want to punish them. It simply means you're choosing to no longer participate in something that's harming you. It's not about revenge, it's about self-preservation. And self-preservation isn't selfish, it's survival. You have a life to live, and you can't live it fully while constantly recovering from emotional wounds someone keeps reopening. One of the challenges in leaving is the fear of the unknown. Even if the situation is unhealthy, it's familiar, and the human mind often clings to what's familiar. That's why you have to remind yourself that peace, stability, and respect are worth stepping into the unknown for. The discomfort of change is temporary, but the cost of staying in a toxic dynamic can last a lifetime. You also have to prepare for pushback. People who are used to having access to you don't always accept losing that access quietly. They may try to pull you back with apologies, promises, or even anger. They may suddenly act like the version of themselves you always wanted, hoping it will lure you back in. That's when you have to remember why you made the decision in the first place. Write it down if you have to. Keep a list of the reasons you're leaving so that when emotions cloud your memory, you can remind yourself of the truth. Exiting with strength is also about how you leave. You don't have to slam the door, burn every bridge, or create unnecessary drama. You can leave with grace, clear, calm, and firm. That's not for them, that's for you, because the way you exit says something to yourself about who you are. You're not running away, you're not crumbling, you're choosing, and that choice is rooted in self-respect. The days after you walk away may feel strange. You might feel lighter, but also lonelier. You might miss the person even though you don't miss the treatment. That's normal. The absence of chaos can feel like emptiness at first because your emotions have been running on adrenaline for so long. Give yourself time to adjust. Fill that space with things and people that remind you of who you were before the manipulation started, and who you're becoming now that it's over. Over time, you'll notice the shift. You'll realize you're no longer waking up wondering how they'll act today. You'll feel your mind getting clearer, your confidence rebuilding, your joy returning, and that's when you'll know leaving wasn't just the right move, it was the necessary one. Because when you exit with strength, you're not just walking away from them, you're walking toward yourself. So here's the choice in front of you right now: keep letting someone else write the story of your emotions, or pick up the pen and take it back. You are not powerless, you are not stuck, you have everything you need to protect your peace, reclaim your worth, and step into the life you were meant to live. Don't wait for permission, don't wait for the perfect moment. The moment is here. Stand up, draw your line, and take your power back starting today.